the staff hires that they've made in the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And starting off, I guess I wanted to get your thoughts or quick grades on them as like just a normal report card grade on how you think that hire is. So GM is Brad Holmes.
A.
B+.
I was gonna say B+. Yeah, to me, there's other candidates that I like, but I do like that Brad Holmes was pretty much head of the Aaron Donald trade. I mean, obviously, if you do a redraft of any sorts, like that's the number one pick now that year. Like that guy's the greatest defensive player in the league right now.
And I think I said it when we talked about it right after he got hired. The only thing that, like, when you get hired, so a GM deals with drafting and free agency contract negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
When you get hired as someone who dealt with one of those, I'm weary of how you're going to deal with the other one. So when you get hired as a college analyst, like, I understand he's been awesome. The Rams have drafted extremely well, especially from not great draft positions. Like, they haven't just had a bunch of top 5 picks that panned out. They drafted very well from random positions. You just have to prove to me that you can do the other side of your job, which is player management, like contract negotiations and free agency signings. So definitely this offseason and the free agency signings will be a big tell, especially when it comes to keeping our cap low.
Yeah.
Because we're a rebuilding team and we shouldn't have a bunch of money put up in any places. And then you'll see personnel management with the Stafford trade. If they are able to get a first-round pick or 2 first-round picks or however it is or however it plays out, okay, then he's proven to me. Then I'd give him an A grade because he's proven to me he can do those other things in his job. But
yeah.
I can't give more than a B+ because I just don't know how it's going to be with free agencies and with trades.
Well, we don't know that with any staff hires. That's the other thing. A lot of this is going to be unknown for the most part. But
yeah,
I like the experience that he has just in this general business. I like that he worked at Enterprise. I know that's a big pull for Ben. Yeah, that's the number one reason why he's an A. Yeah. So but I do like that. He's also been able to pull in some other guys that he knows from the Rams organization that have also helped, and we'll cover those too. But I think he's in charge of a lot of these hires that are being made on top of that right now. So that's also a really good sign.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he kind of brings the Lions sort of more modern too. I think what the Lions have been missing is some of that analytical approach when it comes to drafting or when it comes to roster construction. You can't lean too heavily on that side, but he's certainly it seems like at the same time he's on the same page with everybody else around him, right, on what they want, what they need, and the way you're going to find a diamond in the rough, i.e. Aaron Donald, not everybody thought he was good, but was he that good? That type of thing is, analytics, doing your due diligence, that sort of thing. So it sounds like he's on the cutting edge on that type of stuff, and it'll be good to see the Lions maybe adopt a lot of that. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think like I said, free agency and trading does matter, but at least for the foreseeable future of his job, the next 3 to 4 years, all that's really gonna matter is drafting. They're not gonna be in a position to sign big ticket free agents, and they shouldn't be. And they shouldn't be making massive trades, but 75% of his job going forward for the next 3 years is, are your draft picks panning out? Because that was Bob Quinn's really big knock, is that a lot of his draft picks didn't pan out very well.
Yeah. So a lesser known name, but I'm still a fan of this one too. The assistant GM is Ray Agnew, former NFL player, and formerly with the Rams. And he was the director of pro personnel, which is what Bob Quinn was from New England. So bringing Ray Agnew as an assistant GM, also a big part of, some of the players that they brought in on defense that look like no-namers, but have played pretty well. Again, that could be coaching and development there, but I like the Ray Agnew came along with Brad Holmes.
Well, I think it's just the idea of some familiarity. You want some familiarity in the building. You want guys that are definitely on the same page. They're gonna know what the idea is, what the thought processes are behind certain things. You're gonna be able to do that already. And I think when you're a guy like Bob Quinn and you make that jump from where Agnew was, director of player personnel or whatever, to GM without having like an assistant GM season or 2 or 3 or whatever under your belt, I think that's harder. Now you pull Agnew in. He's obviously really talented. He's highly regarded for what he's already done. Now you get him, probably a step up as far as responsibility goes a little bit. You give him that, and then probably, eventually, ideally, for him, he'll probably want to be a GM, right? But this is his next step, so I think it's a good hire. And I just like that you're continuing, familiarity, some continuity there with your GM already in place.
Absolutely. The owner and president's assistant, Chris Spielman. What about that one? Do you like that?
The fans should all like it. I mean, I think Chris Spielman's a bright guy. He's a football guy, so you get a guy that's not necessarily.
And he's a Lions guy.
Yeah, and he loves the Lions. He'll always love the
Every
Lions.
broadcast, he's still on them.
Yeah. So when you talk about like Rod Wood, Rod Wood's biggest issue, and he'll even admit to this, is he's not a football guy, right? And so he sees things from a businessman's lenses, which is, you got to have some of that, right? But Spielman's going to be able to bring some of that football knowledge, some of that understanding of how the NFL works and how the game of football translates to the front office, and I think that'll help them.
It's going to allow Rod Wood to think twice before any real football decision is made, to have these kind of assistants or advisors alongside it.
And I think it's like my whole thing with it is like, why is this now suddenly the plan? Like, why hasn't this been in place for years? You know what I mean? Like, you can't just have just business guys around, and you can't just have just football guys around. The football guys who haven't been involved, in a front office of any sort before, they aren't going to know some of the business aspects of running a team, while a guy like Rod Wood, who's certainly a businessman, is not going to understand how that necessarily relates to the football team all the time. So you got to have both. You got to have a balance there, and I think Spielman brings that, and it's always good, good for the fans. If it works out, it's going to be Chris Spielman did that's a good story, I guess. So
yeah.
Senior personnel executive John Dorsey, a GM that's been a GM for 7 years, has that extra experience, and I think he's just going to be another reason maybe players and some of these coaching hires are going to want to come work underneath.
I think it's an A, just because it's this might even be the best hire so far.
I think it is, yeah.
Because just from, like you said, an experience standpoint, and like I look at it like this, like probably it's kind of a similar thing. Like, okay, Juwan Howard, when he was hired at Michigan, right, had never been a head coach anywhere, right? He'd been an assistant coach for the Heat for a few years, and then he was a player, right? So he brings down to his staff Phil Martelli, who'd been a head coach for like 40 years at Division I, right? And obviously, like, Juwan's still a head coach. He's got the final say. He's making all the decisions. But from like an organizational standpoint and like understanding certain things that a head coach needs to handle, Martelli's a guy that he can lean on and be like, oh, he's been here forever. He's seen it all, right? And I think that's what what they're going to be able to do with Dorsey here is like he's the experience in the room. Like, he's seen enough as a GM, and a pretty well regarded GM to where like, hey, he can be an advisor that they rely on, when they're making certain decisions, or and he can just be a part of the process. And I think that's important to have, especially when you have a guy who hasn't been a GM before that you hired as a GM. So, yeah.
Well, I think like kind of what I was saying about gosh, why can't I think of his name? With the Harris GM.
The who's?
Brad Holmes. Like, hopefully he hired Dorsey with some like mindset of saying like, hey, this guy's going to help with some of my deficiencies, with player personnel and management. Like, hey, there are some things that I'm not very good at, and this guy's good at them. So that's always what I want to see anybody in a position of power doing. Like, hey, I'm good. I'm qualified for the job I have, but I need some help learning the intricacies of it, like you said, Ben, with Juwan Howard, and like learning these sides of it that I'm not good at. So let me do that. And if that's what this hire was for, then I'm all for it.
Yeah,
yeah, I love it.
like in the Howard situation, like, yeah, I think everybody was pretty convinced Juwan Howard could coach. Like, you know, he knows basketball, you know, but at the same time, like organizationally, like understanding, you know, all the different things you need to do to be able to run a team at Division I, like at a place like Michigan, or, you know, a big place like that, like that's probably where he would not be. Just knowing the recruiting rule book, you know what I mean? Like dumb things like that you'd never think about. Like that's where you need some help. And same situation for Brad Holmes. Like there's some things, obviously he's been in the front office, so he knows how it works, but like there's some things that like he probably will run into that he's never seen before. And like, that's where Dorsey comes in.
Well, I think about it too, even before Juwan Howard, John Beilein, one of the best offensive coaches in basketball, hired basically a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, because he's not good at coaching defense.
Because, I think it was Donelon. Like,
the first guy, Donelon,
he always had someone on his staff who was like the defensive coordinator, basically, because he was like, hey, I can get Duncan Robinson to shoot 500 threes and be efficient from the three-point line. I cannot teach Xavier Simpson how to guard. So I need someone to do that.
Yep.
Yeah. So the one front office guy that ended up staying from the Lions last year, he's in his 14th year as the VP of football administration. That's Mike Dissner. I actually, again, not a lot known about him, but he's kind of in charge of negotiating contracts. And I think that there were a couple that were questionable, but who knows how much Bob Quinn had his hands in that. I just think it's another good year for Brad Holmes. My only concern is this going to be like one of those cases where it's like too many chefs in the kitchen can spoil the dish.
Well, I mean, I think that's just on Holmes to organize. So that's on him to that. I mean, if it fails because of that, that's his fault. You know what I mean? Like he's got to be, you have to have a chain of command and properly, you know, that's got to be properly handled. I think this is fine. You know, you got to have some carryover typically, in my opinion, for most transitions, just because you got to know every job's different. You know, you want to have somebody who's been there before. Could be maybe an ear or more of a liaison to the Ford family, right? You know, it could be something like that where he's been there a long time. So he had a better relationship with them at the beginning, right? Obviously, there's no way they would have got hired if he had a bad relationship with the Fords, but I think that can help with certain aspects. And so you want to have somebody that's been there before, and obviously if Holmes kept him, that means he at least feels like he provides something, So.
Yeah. All right. So the coaching positions, head coach Dan Campbell. How do you like that one?
Yeah, I'm fired up.
Yeah. I ran through a wall, two of them.
Yes, I was ready to find the nearest brick wall when he did his press conference.
You wouldn't want to just spoil that beautiful glass wall behind you.
No, that would hurt a lot. I showed my wife
shards out of your elbow.
I showed my wife that video of his press conference, and when I know her, who doesn't really watch sports at all, that she looks at it and like, what the heck was that? Then I'm like, I love it. Yeah. Like she doesn't understand it. She's really confused by it. It's probably
even my mom, my 61-year-old mother was like, that was a good press conference.
Yeah, we're gonna bite his kneecaps off, and on the way to back up, we're gonna bite the other kneecap.
So my thing with him is like, there's been a lot of coaches that have won the press conference, though. Even Patricia, I'd say, won his press conference. Like he had people excited at the time. Looking back, it was stupid, but like he had people excited at the time for the hire. Right?
I don't know if I wanted to run through a wall for him.
No, not necessarily.
I didn't want to go on the street because he was an analytical
fired up, but like at least he had people like, oh my gosh, maybe this is a really good hire. Like we might do this. I'm not necessarily, fired up about Campbell's hire from a, pure football standpoint. But what I am fired up about is Dan Campbell, and it's been talked about before, and this is a huge reason why they even hired him. He's the kind of coach that other good coaches are going to want to come coach with, are going to want to come to the Lions and do this with him. It's already been seen, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Staff in a minute here. And that was literally one of the first things I read something. I don't remember who posted it, but that was one of the things that like really intrigued, Holmes and Ford family and everybody who was involved in that process about him was, okay, yeah, this guy fires people up and like he cares about where he's at. He's obviously played in Detroit too, so like, there's that aspect of it too, which is cool. But he makes people want to be there with him, right? He's charismatic. He people want to coach with this guy, and that can help maybe some of his shortcomings, like he talked about, where maybe is he the great? We'll find out, I guess. But is he the greatest X's and O's guy? Maybe not. But if he can bring good guys in with him, maybe that makes
and constant passion. So I think that's one thing that Matt Patricia definitely not have is
he's the opposite of Matt Patricia.
Yeah,
neither
Matt
did Jim
Patricia looked
Caldwell.
like he just like blank stared at like nothingness if the game was going wrong, just no reaction. I think with Dan Campbell, you always know that you have a coach that's going to give a damn every single week.
I think we talked about that too. When you're a player, I obviously have never been on an NFL roster.
What?
But when you look over to the sideline and your coach is just like something crazy happens, something terrible happens, a terrible call gets made, a terrible whatever happens. You look over and your coach is just like,
yeah, exactly.
You as a player, you're going to be like, well, what the heck, dude? Like,
so here's the
well,
problem.
I get it, Ben. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, so obviously we stick to sports around here, but like the inauguration speech last week. So I was at work and our secretary was watching it, and she was like just talking about how great of a speech it was and how like all this stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, like I didn't say it to her just because I didn't want to like ruin her thunder. But regardless of what you feel about whatever the presidential candidate is, like it's a speech. Like it's like no duh, it's gonna be good. Like he's worked on it since November, probably before that. Two, it's like the biggest, like it's the most eyes that are gonna be on him at one point, probably in his entire regardless of president. Regardless of like what they do in their career, unless it's like the announcement that like we killed Hussein, except for something like that.
Yeah,
it's the most eyes that are ever going to be on him at one point. Same with a coach press conference. It's the most eyes that are going to be on him unless he's winning the Super Bowl, unless he's doing something incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's gonna be a good speech. I just think that the reason I liked it so much is just because it's different than what the Lions have had, and it's incredibly authentic. Like that's the one thing you could tell. Like again, with politician speeches, you can usually tell they're not authentic. But when you looked at that speech, you were just like, oh yeah, I know who Dan Campbell is now.
Well, that guy never looked at his notes, so it didn't seem like there was anything, like you said, written about it. Like he was speaking from the heart.
No, yeah,
he swore.
That's the thing.
I love it.
The problem with Patricia is he was just always trying to be like Bill Belichick 2.0. Like people respect Bill Belichick because, and he's the guy that, if something happens on the sideline, he's not getting all jacked up, freaking out or whatever. But he doesn't have to. He's won X amount of Super Bowls, right? Like he earned that respect over time, right? But if you're losing and that happens, like you've automatically lost all respect or all any kind of, you just lost your team at that point. So I think Dan Campbell, I agree, he's going to care. He's going to show that he cares, and we'll see what happens. I think the one thing that you can't do if you're a head coach getting hired, you can't lose the press conference. So he certainly didn't do that. So we'll see what happens. But I give it a B for now, and ask me at the end of next year, and we'll see.
I think a B is a good grade. I mean, but the
more.
hard thing is, I think I would have given almost any coach this year, other than, obviously Robert. I wanted Urban Meyer at the very beginning, but I don't know if he's a good fit for Detroit. So I still don't know if I would have given him more than a B plus. And then even Robert Saleh, probably still around a B or a B plus. Like I don't know if there's another guy that would have been like, I'm giving this guy an A.
I would have maybe given Bieniemy more, depending on how it kind of all went down. So, but I'm not against Campbell at all, because I know the Lions, at least it seemed like they did their due diligence too. They took their time. They interviewed everybody. They went through it properly. So
yeah. So you were talking about how Dan Campbell's bringing in a good staff. We're going to the offensive coordinator. They get Anthony Lynn, last year's head coach, the guy that was obviously in charge of finding Justin Herbert and still developing Justin Herbert to have the greatest rookie quarterback season, of any NFL quarterback, really. And that's pretty unprecedented. So I'm pretty excited about this hire, and I'm going to give Anthony Lynn an A grade as well.
That's my favorite hire. I think I like John Dorsey. I like a lot of these other hires. My favorite hire is Anthony Lynn. I think the reasoning that he got fired is he wasn't defensive minded enough to be successful as a head coach. So he's all offense. Like he obviously, like we said, had a huge hand in making Justin Herbert look so incredible this past year. And like the one thing that's not really, I hesitate to say this, but like the one thing that hasn't been a problem for the San Diego Chargers is the offense. Like it just hasn't been under Anthony Lynn. Like sometimes it's the decision making. So again, he's not the head coach for the Lions, but like the offensive production, it's always been like, oh, they are creative, they use their playmakers, and they probably should be better than they are. So it's my favorite hire that was made.
To me, he's my favorite offense coordinator we've had since Mike Martz. When Mike Martz was helping John Kitna throw 4,500 to 5,000 yards every year.
Yeah, I would say it's a good hire for all the the abilities as an offensive coordinator, play caller, whatever. But it's also a good hire because he's been a head coach. Again, kind of the same idea behind bringing in Dorsey, but like something comes up with Campbell, right, to where it's like, hey, a weird situation as a head coach, like you have Anthony Lynn as that guy.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I still ain't muted. I see.
He wanted me to mute myself. I didn't know what. I didn't.
No,
know
I said to ask to unmute you, and I'm like, oh, what's going on there? But
anyway, yeah, you've got Anthony Lynn as that guy that maybe you can lean on a little bit, who's been a head coach. He's been through that a little bit. And I think it's good to surround yourself with former head coaches if you're a first year head coach. So.
Yeah. I think an underrated hire is going to be Aaron Glenn that we ended up getting from New Orleans Saints defensive backs coach. I think a lot of his players specifically have said he's been well overdue for at least a coordinator spot. So I don't know. He has rapport already with Dan Campbell, which is a big reason why. Dan Campbell is establishing a load of former players coach specific positions and be a coordinator. So I like this one a lot. He started from the bottom. He basically started as a general manager of an LSFL football team. And then he ended up going to personnel scout for the Jets in 2012. And then from there, he's worked his way up from assistant D-backs coach to defensive backs coach for the last about 4.5 years. And then, now he's getting his defensive coordinator spot for it. Obviously, that was a really good secondary with New Orleans.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, like that one, to me, like a DB coach is more relying on, who your D coordinator is and like what kind of scheme you're running and stuff like that. Position coaches are extremely important, and you want a guy that's up and coming and, can game plan really well and can obviously teach technique and things like that really well. But, from all accounts, he's up and coming as a coach. And those are the kind of guys that you want as your position coach, in my opinion. You don't, or guys that are just like incredibly good and maybe they are 65, right? You want you don't want the guys that are just kind of have been stuck as position coaches and they're just kind of mediocre. You want guys that are up and coming and, heading towards coordinator positions.
Special teams coordinator, Dave Phipp. He ended up coming from the Philadelphia Eagles with a lot of other guys that we'll also get to. But Eagles, again, pretty good special teams. Cam Johnston was a good punter for a little bit. Jake Elliott became a good kicker. I think their long snapper is a magician on America's Got Talent, John Dornbos. So, hey, lots of good things they're bringing.
Again, like we talked about Coombs, I don't really get fired up about special teams coordinators because I think it matters who your kicker, punter, and return guy are. But, you got to have a guy there, and hopefully he doesn't screw anything up is what I would say.
We get another guy coming with Anthony Lynn for this next position, the defensive line coach. It's not officially been announced, but it looks like it's going to be Jiff Smith. And again, all these guys, every single one of these guys so far has been under the age of 54. So they're not getting a really old guy. And a lot of these guys have player experience. But again, a guy that's started from the bottom as a graduate assistant, worked his way up to defensive line coach at multiple different places. And then now was a Los Angeles Chargers defensive line coach for the last 5 years until this job. So looks like it's set in stone. It is on Wikipedia, but I think it's people are really high on this hire.
Yep.
Sure.
do another linebacker coach. They have not announced yet. Quarterbacks coach still not announced. Wide receiver and tight end not announced. So there's still only 3 others that have. The defensive backs coach was announced to be Aubrey Pleasant, which
Huge hire. I like that one a lot. I like Aubrey Pleasant.
So does again, not a lot of people know about positional coaches, but Jalen Ramsey, really high on that guy. And Jalen Ramsey is one of the best. Also came from the Jaguars to the Rams and says that far better. Pleasant's a great hire.
Yeah, I think Pleasant was up for a lot of D coordinator jobs last year, even whether in pro or college. I know Michigan looked at him as a possible position coach or D coordinator hire this year. So I think I like him a lot. He's got a good track record. So I would say that's a good one.
Yeah, D'Angelo Hall and Bashad Breeland, Quentin Dunbar, those are all our guys that have been under his watch that have really developed. Duce Staley is the running backs coach.
Great name.
I like that a lot too, and I think a lot of people always consider him to be one of the best running back coaches in the league. And again, another guy that was up for offensive coordinator positions.
Great name. Hey, Duce.
Duce is a great name. He's also kind of in the same position that that Dan Campbell was in with Saints this past year. He's running backs coach, but he's also assistant head coach, so he's going to get some of that experience. I don't really expect him to be around much more than this next year because I think he will get a coordinator spot or another spot somewhere else. But that's a great hire to have him on
to help the development of DeAndre Swift or maybe Kerryon Johnson.
You got a couple young backs there that need a good coach. So.
And then the other one that was the Lions actually brought back again from Philadelphia, but Hank Fraley for the offensive line. And again, Hank Fraley is considered to be like the Chris Kosterick of offensive line coaches. A great offensive line coach. Chris Kosterick is like the defensive line, know-it-all. But yeah, again, I'm happy with almost every single one of these hires. The only one I don't know much about is Dave Phipp at special teams, but everything I've seen about him, good reports. I think so far so good. I guess my dream Phil would be see if we can get Josh McCown to be the quarterback's coach or something. He's been around long enough. Maybe he's ready finally for a coaching job.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Probably not, but yeah.
The Lions also interviewed Ike Hilliard for the offensive coordinator spot, so maybe he stays as a wide receivers coach and comes to join Dan Campbell.
Awesome.
Michael Will Hoyt is the linebackers coach he's the assistant defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, but he has linebacker coach experience as a former linebacker in the NFL. I hope the Lions can pry him from San Francisco.
I think the thing with the position coaches is it's probably going to be guys that we aren't really thinking about unless they have Lions ties or Dan Campbell ties.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I so many times you hope they'll pull, but I was going to go through the Pro Bowl snubs, but we've been doing this a little bit. So maybe I just take a quick break and get ready for a great speech.
Well, I wrote a good sentence about the Pro Bowl. Can I just say it?
Yeah, you can say it.
Okay, the Pro Bowl is stupid, and anyone who takes it seriously is a buffoon. There is no reason we should care about an accolade where the reward is a game of dodgeball.
What?
I watch that game of dodgeball every year faithfully.
Oh, I'm sure. That's all I had to say.
Can't get enough of it, especially 3 years ago when it was Oregon uniforms. It was amazing.
Yeah, that was stupid. That was stupid.
Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
All right.